So dear colleagues, good morning, good afternoon, good evening to all of you. Welcome to the first side event of the 53rd session of the UN Statistical Commission. My name is Yongyi Min. I'm the Chief of SDG Monitoring Section at the UN Statistical Division. So welcome to this first side event. This side event focuses on preparing evidence-based voluntary national reviews by sharing best practices and experiences from 4 countries that have presented or will present their voluntary national review. So we all know that voluntary national reviews prepared by the member states is one of the critical follow-up and review mechanism for the 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development. They're normally presented at a high-level political forum on sustainable development in July every year. So these VNRs, prepared through a country-led process, facilitate the sharing of experiences, both successes and challenges among member states, with a view toward accelerating implementation of the 2030 Agenda. Data and statistics are the backbone of any meaningful and evidence-based review of the implementation of the SDGs. However, many countries are facing the great challenges of with limited data availability, the lack of timely data, and the lack of disaggregated data, which limit full review of the SDG implementation. In addition, the COVID-19 crisis is causing serious disruptions to critical statistical operations across the entire world. So to date, 176 voluntary national reviews has been presented at the high-level political forum since 2016. So of those, 42 present in 2021, and another 46 countries are planning to present in 2022. So these side events aim to highlight country experiences, best practice, and challenges in developing evidence-based voluntary national review. And we will hear from 4 countries regarding their experiences. Without further ado, we will hear the first presentation from Somalia, which will present their VNRs in 2022. First, I would like to invite Ms. Sharmaki Farrell, the Director General of the Somalia National Bureau of Statistics, give some introductory remarks. Then, following that, Ms. Alexandra Silverstop, a consultant working with the UNDP, will present their work of the VNR demonstrating digital tools they have developed together with the Somali National Bureau of Statistics. The floor is yours, Ms. Sharmaki.
Thank you very much, Yongyi, and thank you to the organizers, and thank you for inviting us to present at the side event of the 53rd session of the UN Statistical Commission. We are very pleased to be presenting our experience, and this is the first time that we are presenting at the VNR this year, Somalia. It is better late than never, but we're very excited about presenting in 2022. And Somalia is really committed to UN Sustainable Development Goals. And the best way to really show this commitment is through data and to be guided by evidence-based data and so on. So the government has designated the Somali National Bureau of Statistics to lead the effort in the VNR and in showing the progress and also the status of our SDG attainment. And this is why we have taken this effort to really use evidence-based and data and visualization of our data. So we really are also encouraged by the UN's support. The UN Deputy and Secretary General Amina Mohamed's visit also helped at the end of last year. We are also grateful for her encouragement in Somalia in presenting this year. So without further ado, I would like to welcome my colleague who will be presenting on our behalf the presentation that is being prepared for the evidence-based voluntary national reviews for this session. So Alexandra Silverstock, please welcome. Thank you very much.
Pardon me, Alexandra, sorry, you're still on mute.
Alexandra, can you hear us? We cannot hear you. You're still on mute. You are still muted.
No, I hope it works. Can you hear me?
Okay, yeah, now we can hear you.
Oh, very sorry about that. So I would just go straight into a presentation of the work that we did together with a team of SNBS to analyze the data gaps, what data exists in Somalia, to track the SDGs, and where are the current data gaps. And I will also take you through a few other things that we looked into in detail, including what data can be disaggregated, etc., through a data scorecard. So what I would do is actually to switch over now to a digital tool that will allow us to a bit more in an interactive way see how it plays out. So what we did in Somalia was really to see what of all the SDG indicators is there any data for in Somalia. And as we see, if we look at, if we sort of make an assessment of all indicators in Somalia, there is about 37% or close to 38% indicator coverage currently. And what we also did was to see what of the indicators are applicable to Somalia. And SNBS went through all the indicators to see what can they, what do they want to track and so on. As you all know, some indicators may not be applicable to a particular country because it's global commitments. So these are the striped boxes here. But we took all the goals. Each box represents an indicator. A gray box means that there is currently no data available, and a colored box means that there is data available. But in order to narrow this down a little bit further, we wanted to assess data availability across tiers. So when it comes to tier 1 indicators, there is about more than 50% indicator coverage currently that Somalia can use in the upcoming VNR. And the ambition of SNBS, as you have pointed out, Jean-Marc, is to focus in the near term on the tier 1 indicators. If we switch over to tier 2 indicators, we see that the coverage is much less. So there is a greater challenge here. One other element that we looked into quickly was also to see how the Somalia's National Development Plan, NDP 9, is linked to the various SDGs and Agenda 2063, because Somalia, as all other African countries, also need to report on Agenda 2063. So we took the different pillars of the National Development Plan and saw to what extent they are linked and to which SDGs they are linked. This is also something that the government of Somalia will use in its VNR. And we can also see that there are linkages with several Agenda 2063 goals as well. But this can also help in the future to sort of see in all reporting, whether it's reporting on the NDP, SDGs, or Agenda 2063, there are a lot of indicators that run across each framework, so to say. Then we went a little bit further to really see what of the data then that is available can be broken down by suggested disaggregated levels. And as in all know, I mean, there are ambitious disaggregations that have been suggested by the UN and its members. So we took all the indicators and put the suggested disaggregation levels at the bottom. A colored box here means that data is possible to this one for this indicator, particular indicator, can be broken down by age, but not by the other recommended disaggregation levels. And similarly, you can then go in and assess all the various goals and indicators through a data scorecard like that. And it will also help NBS in the future in upcoming surveys and studies and various data gathering to sort of see if there are some sort of low-hanging fruits, disaggregation levels that come across in many indicators that could be a focus in the near future. And then we also did mapping of the current data ecosystem in Somalia to see what of the indicators that are there now is actually coming from international or national sources. And what we see is a lot of the data is coming from international sources. I'm just saying this very quickly, but it's also a question of harmonizing and cooperating when to start to fill data gaps and also make sure that more indicators in the future are derived from national authorities, which actors need to get around the table. This is currently the setup where the data is coming from, and how can these actors collaborate in a more effective way in the future to strengthen the national statistical system. And then lastly, I thought I would just present 2 or 3 more slides about next steps. What we're aiming for now is to see if we can then, with the data that is given in this analysis that we did, the gap analysis, etc., build a tool so Somalia can start to track progress on the various SDGs. This could also be very helpful for the upcoming VNR to be able to see the data broken down as far as possible, using different ways of tools to explore the data. We are thinking of, if it's possible, we'll have to see with the timeline now, but to build an automated VNR maker, which could allow Somalia to drag and drop visualizations from Data Explorer and draft a section on the report. So the whole purpose here would be not to spend all the time on creating all these graphs, etc., but rather focus on the analysis. So what does this data tell us, and the analysis, why is it looking like this? Means of implementation is also something that has to be part of the VNR. What resources are available to meet the Somali government's ambitions, and this is something that we hope that we will be able to cover as well ahead of the VNR. Thank you.
Thank you so much. It's great to hear that the Somali National Bureau of Statistics is leading and providing data in the VNRs, and this is really a great digital tool to demonstrate the data availability for the SDG indicators, and particular on data disaggregation and data sources for data gap analysis. So I will probably ask one question from the chat directly to you. I think it's from Nico De Paula. Asked, is the scorecard available for public consultation?
Yes, I mean, the link is up and it can be shared. And I think I will direct the question back also to Shamarke, how they intend to use the data and the tools in the various consultations within the country. But yes, I mean, it can be explored with you here, so you can have a look at it. Thank you.
Yes, so in principle, we intend to share it, and the link will be uploaded. I think that the ICT technical team are working on that, so it should be available. Thank you.
Yeah.
And just a last remark, and I really wanted to emphasize this. This work was just done in 3 months' time, actually, and I really want to give the credit to DG Shamarke and his team, because they did an excellent job in pushing this, and the ownership, I think, is absolute key, you know, in any VNR process, you know, to get the government actors and the stakeholders on board in such a good way. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much, Ms. Farah and Ms. Silverstope. And so I think there's also someone asked for the link. If it's already available, you can, would you be able to share in the chat? Otherwise, we probably will get it from you later and then share it with everyone. Thank you so much. So I will move on to the next speaker, Mr. Jack Ducrest, the delegate of the Federal Council for the 2030 Agenda of Switzerland, will provide us a presentation on the SDG Digital 2030, which is an instrument to collect data for the VNRs. The floor is yours, Mr. Ducrest.
Thank you. Thank you very much for giving me the floor, and thank you very much for giving me the possibility to present the digital tool which we have developed a year ago when we started preparing the VNR, this digital called S Digital 2030. The next slide, please. To prepare a VNR means to collect data, qualitative and quantitative data, about the 169 different targets, then about the 17 SDGs, and then with all these informations, trying to write and finalize a VNR. What we did in 2018, when we did our second VNR, we did all this work with quite traditional processes, with email, with interviews, with discussion platforms, with Word documents, Excel tables. This was very traditional and very, very complex, because when you have to analyze 169 targets and to coordinate the evaluation of 169 targets with hundreds of people via email, discussion platform, and interviews, it gets very complicated. This was our first lessons learned. We have to find another way to prepare our VNR 2022. For this reason, we decided to develop a digital tool, a digital process to facilitate the process of collection of data and to make it more efficient and transparent. Next, please. Why digitalizing a process? Why digitalizing this assessment? Our objective was to strengthen coordination among all the people involved in this evaluation, meaning federal government, canton, provinces, cities, external actors. We need to have a platform where all these people can interact. And when you have this kind of platform, you can then have a better continuity in the evaluation of the targets and SDGs until 2030. Because without this platform, you have to start from scratch every 4 years, which is very frustrating. With this tool, we can constantly evaluate and adapt our baseline, our database. This digital tool helps also including many stakeholders. We can have 100, we have 1,000 stakeholders acting, participating in this evaluation, in this assessment. And finally, the result, which I will show you later, is that all this information can be made public, and they will be made public at a later stage in May 2022 on a website. And we needed also a lot of data, a lot of quantitative data. But what we faced quite early is that the official data from our Federal Office of Statistics was very often not enough or enough precise or giving not enough information about what we wanted to tell. So that we decided to build for each and every SDG so-called data clusters. This means that we have been looking for data from different data providers to mix them and in order to be able to tell a more concrete and more complete story about each and every SDG. Next slide, please. How does the whole system function? On one side, we developed an input tool to collect data. When you have collected all these data, you put them in a database. A huge amount of data are now collected in this database, and based on this database, you can then produce different products. One of them is the VNR, another one is the website, which I will present in a few seconds. Next slide, please. How did it work in the federal administration? To evaluate 169 targets and make a synthesis of the 70 SDGs requested the cooperation of about 50 different departments from all ministries, and around 519 people took part in this exercise. We had quite good experiences with this. Of course, out of these 500 people, maybe some of them were not very keen about working with the digital tool because they preferred to work with their own good means. But with some support, we succeeded in having them more or less, or everyone on board. From the external actors, from the canton, from the provinces, from the cities, and from other organizations, we have sent to all of them a link, telling them, here is a link, you can now evaluate from your perspective each and every target, and you can also save on this platform all your own contributions to the implementation of these different targets. We sent about 500 links. We received about 100 contributions. This is the lessons learned also we drawing from this exercise. We noticed that actually quite many organizations and provinces were a little bit reluctant to answer this question because they had the impression that the federal government was actually controlling them, or kind of wanted to show that they were not really interested. I see that the sound is very poor. Is it better now? It sounds better. Okay. I will try, perhaps just 1 second. I will just change. I will put maybe it will be better this way. Stakeholders were sometimes not always very keen on answering our question because they had the impression that the federal government was controlling them. Same for the canton, for the provinces. They had the same feeling. Why does the federal government ask us about our own implementation of the 2030 agenda? Because they are probably the government is probably controlling us. Next slide, please. So what we did, come back in, we have been evaluating these 169 targets and 17 SDGs with this little system. We dispatched the 169 targets within the government to 169 different competent persons. And we asked them to make a stand about the measures taken during the last 4 years, the progress made during the last 4 years, and finally, the challenges remaining until 2030. And this statement of each and every ministries was then commented by all the interested ministries, telling the main competent ministry, we agree with you, we don't agree with you. And the same happened with external actors. They were also able, within their own organizations, to evaluate the implementation, the measures, and the challenges, and to implement, to give a bit more information about the quantitative data supporting these qualitative data. Next slide, please. And with this tool, I was in my position as delegate coordinating the whole process. This means that I was able to see during the 6 months of evaluation of the implementation of these 169 targets, where each and every ministry, where each and every department was standing, what kind of progress were made, and I was able to tell them, well, we're late, well, you're too fast, well, please consult with other colleagues, please. Next slide, please. So this was, thank you, this was the input side. The output side, now we have two output sides. The first output side is the Voluntary National Review. So based on this database where we collected all this information, we now wrote our VNR, which is here on the right-hand side. Next slide, please. And here you have, for example, 2 pages summarizing where Switzerland stands as far as SDG 1 is concerned. On the left side, you have all the indicators showing where we are going well, where we are not going so, where we're not doing so good, and especially, for example, the poverty index in Switzerland, where we can see that the number of poor people is mainly, of course, due to COVID-19 crisis, is increasing. On the right side, we are describing on the left at the national level, on the right at the national and international, what kind of progresses and what kind of challenges are remaining. Next slide, please. The second output is a website. All these evaluation, measures, progress, and challenging identified are now, will be summarized, will be displayed on a website, which will be put online in May 2022. This means that each and every Swiss citizen or specialist or everyone around the world interested by the implementation of the 2030 agenda by Switzerland will be able to know where does Switzerland stand regarding target 12B, 17.1, and also to get the view not only for the government, but also from the other stakeholders. Next slide, please. So this is the front page of this website. You will be able to click on each and every SDG. Next slide, please. And when you click, you will come, for example, here on SDG 7, where you will have also all these statistical data explaining where Switzerland stands nationally and internationally. Next slide, please. Then you will move to on the next level. This means that then you can move to the target level. And here also you will have the information about the implementation. And if you, on the left side, where you can see the little flag of Switzerland, you will have the possibility to see where, according to the government, Switzerland stays regarding this as this target 7.3, but you will be also in position to see what are the views of other stakeholders about the implementation of target 7.3. Do these NGOs agree with the Swiss government about the implementation of these targets, or do they think that the Swiss government is too ambitious or too pessimistic? Next slide, please. And this is my last slide. These two outputs based on this database will be connected together. On the left side, we have the output number 1, the Voluntary National Report of Switzerland 2022. It will be a document of about 50 pages presenting the strategic progress and strategic challenges which we still have to face until 2030. It will be rather a political strategic document. And on the right-hand side, you have the website, and both documents will be connected with a QR code. This means that if you look on the left side, the Voluntary National Review, in the back of the second page, you have this QR code so that everyone who is interested to know a little bit more that what we have published here on these 2 pages about the implementation of all the targets here of SG2, you will be able to click on this QR code and come on the website and get all the information about the implementation of this target of this SDG with the views of the government and the views of external actors, meaning provinces, cities, and all organizations, economy, finance, research and innovation as civil society. Thank you very much for attention. If you have any question, let me know, please.
Thank you so much, Mr. Ducrest. This is a really a fantastic digital instrument to collect data from so many data providers within the country, and to make this very complex process more effective and efficient. I think this approach is also promote transparency, inclusiveness, and also take a multi-stakeholder and participatory approach. This is great. I think I see from the chat the first question is a link available for such website? Is this it's already available? So
Not yet.
Not yet.
Not yet available because the Swiss government will approve the report in May, at the probably in the beginning of May, because we have to deliver to the UN our key messages in the beginning of May. So the government will approve the report on the beginning of May and will put the website at the same time online in May 22. And maybe one information, the input tool which I've presented, this tool to collect data, we are now in contact with the UN to standardize this tool, and we would be very happy to share this way of collecting data and give it to each and every country interested in using the same tool.
Yeah, thank you so much. This is really fantastic. I think we probably will invite you back. We will have a VNR lab in July during the HLPF. They will probably invite you back to share this tool with all the
Pleasure.
countries. And then we'll follow up with some questions. And there's one question on, could you please share some of these political barriers that you intend to solve as the next steps?
The political barriers, you know, what we have now, the first reaction of these provinces and cities were, again, the federal government is controlling us. And now slowly we have shown to these cities and provinces, no, look, we're not controlling you, not at all. What we're doing, we are giving you cantons, provinces, cities, organizations, we are giving you the opportunity on a website for all Switzerland to show what is your contribution to the 2030 agenda. So that from this fear they had at the beginning, they are now thinking, oh my God, this may be actually in my interest, in the interest of my organizations to have my contribution, the information about my contribution to the implementation of the 2030 agenda, because I can show then to my stakeholders, to my people that actually I'm working towards this implementation. So the fear of control is now disappearing slowly towards more as an opportunity or chance understood by these external actors that this tool can actually be a good way of making public their own contribution.
Yeah, thank you. And there is a question on the digital handling of the review looks very interesting. How is the National Statistical Office involved in the process, and what will be their role?
So we have done this qualitative evaluation with this tool, and at the same time, the Statistical Office is preparing for each and every SDG and for quite a number of targets, the quantitative evaluation of the targets. And what we're now doing, we're now in the phase of merging these qualitative and quantitative data and coming sometimes to quite difficulties because we notice that the qualitative data doesn't correspond to the quantitative data. This means that we have to have some discussions. And sometimes it comes, and quite often actually, it comes to an overlap. This means that both data correspond. And what the Statistical Office does also, it does now prepare a statistic annex, which will be added to the VNR and integrate on the website.
Yeah, thank you. And there's quite a number of questions. Maybe the next question, could you comment a little more on the content of the form that feeds the database?
The content of the form, what we are doing, I mean, within the federal government, an evaluation of a target is a coordination, is the result of a coordination and consultation process. So we have, with this input tool, we have put at the disposal of the ministries a standardized questionnaire with 3 questions. What kind of measures have you taken in the last 4 years? What kind of progress have you reached? And what are the remaining challenges? And if you want, if I take, for example, SDG 13 relating to climate, this is the Federal Office of Environment who makes the comment, the main comment, and telling to the Swiss government, to the Swiss population, this is what we did, these are the progress, and these are the remaining challenges. And they invite each and every ministry interested in this process to comment on this qualitative evaluation. And then you have within this input tool a dialogue, in a digital dialogue, which is created to see what kind of criticisms or support the Federal Office of Environment gets in its own evaluation. And then based on these different support and critics, it consolidates then the main message of Switzerland regarding this particular target.
Yeah, thank you so much. There's still unanswered questions. And to save time, I probably would ask you to answer them in the chat if possible.
Okay,
and
yeah.
So we can move on to the next
Okay.
speakers. Thank you so much.
Okay, you're welcome. Thank you very much. Pleasure. I will start answering the questions.
Yeah, thanks.
Thank you very much.
So our next speaker is Ms. Karen Chavez, the head of SDG Indicator Unit at the National Administrative Department of Statistical in Colombia. She will present a presentation on integrating new data sources, data innovation, as well as lessons learned and challenges for developing of evidence-based VNR. The floor is yours, Karen.
Thank you so much. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everyone, depending on when you are. Many thanks for the opportunity to share ideas, also to learn from another experience, and to share the view of Colombian experience of Colombia in preparing VNRs. Next slide, please. I will briefly talk about 3 main topics in this presentation. First, the integration of the SDGs into policy making mechanisms and all the data collection process that has been established regardless of the presentation of the VNRs. Next, I will talk about the use of the data in VNRs. And finally, we have been working in additional evidence-based documents for statistical briefs. Next, please. First, about the integration of the annex. The first part I would like to highlight that we have, next slide, please. We have a legal framework here in Colombia. We have interinstitutional groups that work about the 2030 agenda. We have the high-level SDG Commission. The president of this commission is the National Planning Department, and this group is composed by the head of national entities. So we have ministers here, and also general director from another entities. We also have a technical committee and a technical secretariat in charge of the National Planning Department. And we also have some partnership with civil society organization, private sector academy, and another international organizations. And this is important because all these partnerships are also part of the VNR process through consultations, but I will talk a little bit more about this later. In addition to these interinstitutional working groups, we have policy documents that are related to SDGs. About the long-term strategy, we have a policy document called Compass 3918. We have defined a national SDG indicators framework, and we have set some indicators prioritized at the global level to be produced. And about the mid and short term, both national development plans that has been done since the 2030 agenda started are related the goals of these national development plans are related with the SDG goals. Next slide, please. And about the statistical part that we need to be compromised from the statistical entity. We have basically a follow-up scheme. In this scheme, it's done to ensure that data is uploaded every year, again, regardless of the presentation of the VNR. So we have settled down a national framework that is composed by indicators from the global framework, some of them, another indicators that are proxy indicators, and another that are complementary indicators and are based on the specific needs of the country. This data is uploaded every year through a process that I'm going to explain in the next slide. And also, I want to highlight that we have this scheme in this framework, not only the indicators, also some quantitative targets has been established to be achieved by the 2030. So this is also very helpful because it's not only to measure how we have advanced in terms of each indicators, but also how far we are to achieve every goal by indicator. And we have settled down, as I said, SDG data reporting protocol, and it established guidelines for the national SDG indicators. We have defined some responsibilities. The two entities that are in charge of the consolidation, validation, and the upload of the SDG information in our website. We have in the national government a website with all the indicators, and this is done by DANE and the National Planning Department. And we also consider that not all indicators are reported and calculated by the National Statistics Office. We have different ministries and departments also reporting, and it is a total of 21 national entities reporting for SDGs every year. The time period in which we do this, we send the requirement in February. Most of the times we have a reporting deadline by April. And we also define some guidelines that in a document that we share with the entities every time that we ask them to upload the information. We explain all the validation process. We also explain all the characteristics of the information to be reported, mainly doing assume in the categories of the data that should be included. And also we have some protocols to upload the information through the SDMX, that is a format to share statistical information, and it's used for SDGs and for another international statistics. And next slide, please. Here again, just making a zoom in more of the activities done for the reporting process. We have here an example of what we are going to do this year. We request for the update of national SDG indicators on February 15th. We update the final data with a deadline of March 21st. Then we have a consolidation and review of progress information. This is also done in a technical discussion between the National Planning Department and DANE. We analyze indicator by indicator, and then we have a deadline to upload all the data in our national platform. Next slide, please. Okay, all this data that has been uploaded is also used of course, to the VNR. Up to this point, next slide, please. Colombia has presented three voluntary national reviews. The first one in 2016, the second one in 2018, and the last one was last year in 2021. Next slide, please. We want to highlight here the process that was done with the VNR. And first, we have a stage for information and inputs preparation stage. We validate the structure with the SDG Commission. We already have the data collected and we already have the indicators for each goal. So what we do first is to validate with the structure with the SDG Commission, and also a first draft of the main message. And then we share with different sectors of the government for their review. And also we have some mechanisms to involve another actors like workshops and live transmissions to consolidate inputs. And in this phase, we have the structure of all the VNR. In the second stage, we just define what is going to be the main message. And the third stage, we build a final draft and consolidating inputs from everyone. Then we have the final version for the VNR, and we also prepare the country presentation video. In the fourth stage, we have a national event of the VNR presentation. It was done for the last VNR. In the first two VNRs, we didn't do this, and we received some criticism. So we consider this stage very important, and it's first to release and present the document at national level before to present it at the HLPF. Next slide, please. And here we want to also highlight about the consultation process, and the consultation process that is within the government is done through the SDG committee. And so what we done is basically holding bi-weekly meetings of the SDG technical committee to follow up and make decision on the VNR 2021. And with the other sectors, we developed a multi-stakeholders workshop. It was done a review about the final document. We received some comments here about the other sectors, and that probably for the next VNR, we should involve the other sectors from earlier stage, not only to review the last draft of the document. Next slide, please. And finally, we want to highlight that in addition to the VNR, we are developing a statistical brief. We have a series of documents. Next slide, please. A series of documents to encourage the analysis and decision making based on available data on topics considered to be of public interest. A contribution of the notes is to gather in a single document information from different statistical operations of DANE to report on a single selected topic. And we also are including here data from experimental statistics. And experimental statistics here in Colombia are considered official, and they come from traditional and non-traditional data sources. And we are also working with different partners, so we are not only including data from the National Statistics Office and from the government, but also from different actors. And we have done specialized quantitative analysis on humanitarian agenda issues with an emphasis to leave no one behind. For example, we have done one of poverty and gender analysis, the SDG 1. We also have done an analysis of cross-cutting approach of human rights in the 2030 agenda, mental health related to SDG 3, climate change related to SDG 15, another one as pregnancies in children and teenagers. And we also have done these documents with different stakeholders. These stakeholders could be government entities, also agencies of United Nations system here in Colombia, and civil society. And you have a link in the presentation in case you want to consult one of those. And with this, I think that I'm concluding my presentation. Thank you so much. And over back to you.
Thank you so much, Karen. This is a really interesting presentation, and to learn that Danny is leading the data collection process together with the planning department for the VNR process. It's a really well established process on data collection, validation process, and analysis. And you also use this great information to produce not only the VNRs, but also additional interesting output such as the statistical brief series. So it's really great. So I will probably ask a question from the chat. Have you established any periodicity for the VNR presentations or such report preparing respond to specific context or demands?
No, we haven't established any periodicity for VNR. We have just established periodicity for the data collection of each indicator that is part of the national framework.
Thank you. Maybe just a follow up on this question. And do you have like a SDG report annually, or it's just only for the VNR?
We done the update of the data annually, and all these updates could be seen in the national SDG website.
Thank you very much. And without further ado, we move on to our next speaker, which is from the UK, Miss Joanne Evans, the head of international collaboration for health analysis and the pandemic insights at the UK Office for National Statistics. She will provide a presentation on the lessons learned and challenges for developing evidence-based VNR and the inclusion of disaggregated data to leaving no one behind in the VNRs and in the agenda. The floor is yours, Joanne.
Thanks, Yongyi, and thanks for having me here. It's really nice to see some familiar faces in the participant list. Next slide, please. Okay, so we've only done the one voluntary national review, and we did that in 2019. It was a real cross-government collaboration. So it was led by what was then the Department for International Development, who have the policy lead for SDGs in the UK, with significant support from our Cabinet Office and from us at the Office for National Statistics. Now, for data, we used 2015 as a baseline. We covered all 169 targets, but not all of the indicators. We addressed the work that was happening domestically and internationally, but the focus was on the national perspective. And because of the unique setup of the UK, and with a lot of the issues in the SDGs being devolved issues, this was a collaboration with the devolved governments of Northern Ireland, Scotland and Wales. And we also wanted to bring in a range of views, so there were all sorts of stakeholders, businesses, non-government organizations and so on involved. It really was, there were a lot of moving parts. It was a lot to coordinate. Next slide, please. So we talk about our VNR and we say that it was data-led. What does that mean? Well, we established that data was going to be a central theme early on. Because we had already a good relationship with the policy lead, we were able to have that seat at the table, as they say. We were involved in the discussions as the report was being designed. So we were able to negotiate a standalone data chapter. And then, as well as sort of having the data embedded in the text, we designed these data picture boxes. There would be several in each chapter, pulling out a particular point and displaying it as a chart. We also then reminded our colleagues as we were drafting that if they wanted a strong leave no one behind theme, you need data to back that up. And of course, we had a statistical annex, which was a sort of snapshot in time of our open data, our open SDG reporting platform. Next slide, please. Nope, there we go. So what kind of data did we include? Well, we really encouraged the chapter authors to pull their data from our reporting platform as much as possible. We did use other government sources that were more relevant domestically, and they're not shown in sort of the data picture boxes. To add context to the text, we did use some non-government sources. Next slide, please. Also, during the presentation of our VNR, we brought in people representing different groups, and that included Claire Malamed, who is the CEO of the Global Partnership for Sustainable Development Data, to talk about why data are so important. And ONS and DFID are both champions of the Inclusive Data Charter, which talks about how you need to make your data not inclusive, not just by disaggregating it, but also as you design your data collection and your dissemination, you need to be inclusive throughout the whole process. Next slide, please. And one of the ways we've embedded those principles in SDGs in ONS is that we have made sure on our reporting platform, you can interrogate the data to display it visually. And I think this slide, looking at maternal mortality disaggregated by ethnicity, illustrates that. A picture says 1,000 words, as they say. And you can see here the difference between the sort of overall trend for this indicator and then that one particular breakdown. And we've made that feature a focal part of our SDG platform so that people can review the data and looking at the characteristics that they are interested in. Next slide, please. As well as having these data pictures and the annex, we also wanted to use stories within the report to show how data can drive decisions. So another initiative unrelated to the SDGs that the UK has run over the last few years is called the Race Disparity Audit, which is actually kind of a misleading name because it's measuring ethnicity. But this was about challenging ourselves as government to explain or change the disparities in how people from different backgrounds are being treated when they access public services. So, for example, one of the things that we found in this audit was that we didn't have a consistent way of collecting ethnicity data across government. But when we looked then at the findings, when we sort of looked at the data itself, we identified that women from Pakistani or Bangladeshi backgrounds are least likely to be employed. So this data was then combined with data on which areas have high levels of ethnic minority unemployment. And then job centres have taken action and implemented local plans to address this, such as offering one-to-one drop-in services to help these women move into work or take up training. Now, what would be really lovely to have is more data following up then to show how successful these services have been. And unfortunately, that's not something we have yet. Next slide, please. So I'm here to talk about some of the challenges of doing our voluntary national review. Well, we didn't have a system in place to collect all of the data, although we have our national reporting platform, and we thought we were joined up with statisticians across government. You know, we're part of a government statistical service. We found out that we really weren't as joined up as we had hoped to be, not just as us as statisticians in the central, sort of the main statistical body, but also between statisticians and policy leads. And one anecdote that sticks in my mind is we had one lady call us from a government department. She was a policy colleague drafting a chapter, and she kept asking us things about data. And eventually we said to her, you really need to go through the statistician who supports you in your department. And she didn't know who that person was. And when we found out who it was, she sat 2 desks away from this person. Just goes to show that sometimes, you know, if you have these people who specialize in different areas like policy and statistics, they don't necessarily talk to each other, even when they're really close to each other. It was also a challenge because not all of the people writing the different chapters of the VNR were that familiar with data and writing about data. And then it was a challenge in terms of timescales. This needed, you know, we had people writing chapters from across government, from different departments, and their ministers needed to sign off the chapters. But of course, as you know, there are targets in the goals that maybe, you know, maybe you've got the Department for Education writing one chapter, but you want a perspective from health or employment or so on. So there was a lot of go in between, and then eventually it needed to be signed off by the Prime Minister. So no matter how long you thought you needed much longer. And yes, these are opportunities. So it was an excellent networking opportunity. One of the things we did was set up virtual sort of drop-in meetings. So once a week, I would be available in an online meeting for people to come along and ask questions. But we also had online chat functions and all sorts of other ways for people to get in touch. It was an educational opportunity. And I think, you know, we had some frank discussions with people about data, and where these people are not comfortable working with data, part of our job, I think, is to make them comfortable talking to us so that they can ask those questions. The other issue, I would say, the timescale, while it was a big challenge, there is a type of energy that gets injected into your project when you're working at such pace. Next slide, please. So this is my wish list of what I would do differently if we could start again. I would read, of course, this is a plug, shameless plug here for the UNECE roadmap, which has a chapter on voluntary national reviews. Then I would think about when I wanted to do my VNR and start earlier. So think about how much time you need and then add some time on, because it's never going to be enough. Really work on building those relationships. As I said, you need to be able to be comfortable. You need to identify people, first of all, who are topic experts, but you need to be comfortable talking to them, challenging them, you know, educating them on what makes a robust indicator, why they can't use that data source or this one, you know, that sort of thing. And that's where I would say setting some criteria from the start. We wanted to make sure we weren't being accused of cherry picking the indicators that we were going to talk about. And that meant needing to have sort of information about what makes a good indicator ready. And we didn't do that at the very start. Also, I think a longer time series, the time that we did ours, we often didn't have enough data to sort of talk about the direction of travel. And finally, to make it more impactful, I'd really would want some more information about so what. So, for example, we had the story about our data that led to changes in how we address unemployment in certain areas, but I'd really like to know the impact of that. You know, have that circle of data. Data informs a change. How do you then monitor that change? Those are my that's my wish list of things I would do if I were doing it again. And that actually is the last. I think the last slide is just for any questions one. Yeah, with our contact details there. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Joanne, for sharing your experience and the lesson learned from developing the VNR. It's great to learn that there's a standalone data chapter in the VNRs, and which showing the data is an important means of implementation for the SDGs. And also, your VNR gave a particular emphasis on the leaving no one behind using disaggregated data. I will also like the message that the importance you gave bring statisticians and the policy lead together, and even they're just sit almost next to each other, and it shows that they don't talk each other in their daily work. So that's really important, bring them together. So thank you so much. So I think I will probably open the floor for open and discussions. So we will invite all the presenters over to maybe show their face, turn on their camera, and we have some questions that we probably ask all the panelists. The first question is, what are the main challenges faced with the data collection and the management for the preparation of the VNRs? So I will start with Ms. Shamak from Somalia. Could you let us know in your preparation process what's the main challenges?
Thank you very much. I think the most critical or the biggest challenge that we've had. The biggest challenge that we've had is coordinating among government agencies and collating the administrative data. So surveys are quite easy for us. We are the custodian of survey, data, things like that. But when it comes to administrative data that is vastly scattered around, through ministries, departments, and agencies throughout the government, getting them timely, getting them in a robust and a quality is the challenge. Perhaps maybe my colleague also, Abdirzak, can add to this challenge. Thank you very much.
Yes, thank you. I will probably pass the same question to Mr. Ducrest.
Thank you very much. I think an element which is extremely important and which was mentioned by our colleague from Somalia and a colleague from the UK is time. It takes a lot of time to prepare a VNR. And actually, now we're very fortunate that the UN is organizing webinar seminars for VNR presenters. We started in October. We'll have another one in May. And actually, I think that I should have visited the seminars of last year to be really in a good position to prepare our VNR in 2022. I think you really need at least 18 months to do this coordination job, which was also mentioned, to do and especially to convince all these stakeholders that they are part of this process, and we want them on board, and we want them to contribute to this VNR. And this is sometimes the tricky part. Within the government, if I may say so, every civil servant is kind of paid to do this job. So he does it because if his boss tells him to evaluate a target qualitatively or quantitatively, he will do it because actually he's paid for this. Whereas to bring excellent actors to give their view on these on the implementation of the 2030 agenda, it is quite difficult. And then the last point, our partners from the civil society, I expected that they would have maybe a broader view about the implementation of the 2030 agenda. Most of our partners, stakeholders, they were quite reluctant to give a view about one SDG, because each and every SDG is quite diverse, And most of them wanted to concentrate only on 1 or 2 or 3 targets, not more, because this is their field of activities. So I would say to invite the stakeholders to have a broader view about one SDG is also a challenge. Thank you.
Thank you very much for your comments, and I will give the same question to Karen.
Okay, sorry, Jonji, could you please repeat the question?
Yeah. So what are the main challenges faced with data collection and management for the preparation of the VNR?
The main challenge is to always have the validated data on time. And most, as I presented, we have some process that ends on April. However, if we present the VNRs in July, sometimes from April to July, it's not enough time to do all VNR. So yeah, I think again that probably it's time. And also to include, we have tried to do in the past with no specific results up to this point, is to have the data from different stakeholders included in the VNR. So currently we are only taking into account for the VNR the official data that is done and produced by the national government. We have here also some quality and technical challenge that are different, and we need to also address this kind of thing. But I think that this would be the two main challenge. The limited time between the data that is uploaded and the presentation of the document, and on the other hand, to include data from another actors with the technical discussions that needs to be to take place for this. Thank you.
Thank you, Karen. This is, I think, all of the answers showing that such a the process is very complex. I'll probably ask the same question to John.
Hi. So yes, it is a hugely complex thing, and we approached it that the data collection is an ongoing. It's never ending, because there's just always new data sources. And the thing that you need to remember when you are working on collecting all this data is, of course, you are not the expert in that topic. So a lot of it, I think, is about building relationships so that when you identify a data source, you know who to ask. Is this the right source we're using? And then, of course, once you've collected in that headline data, it's the complexity of looking below for the data that will show you really who is most at risk or most vulnerable. It is a huge thing, huge scale, and I think we all know that. But mapping out those data flows as best you can in the beginning, and I think building up your relationships with topic experts will really help you.
Thank you. So I will take one question from the chat. There's one question from Nicola Di Paula. She asked, what are the most relevant contributions from UN agencies and programs when developing the VNRs from the perspective of countries? I think they work with FAO on a new office dedicated to the SDG, and they're exploring how best support country on VNR and agri-food transformations. So I don't know, any of you have working with your agencies and program in development when I have some experience to share.
Yeah, if I may come in here, in our last VNR, we also have a section that talks about the work in terms of new data available for Colombia, and this is done with all the UN system here. So we have a statistical side, and we are also enumerating what are the new indicators from the global framework that were not available in the past, and now thanks to the joint work are available here in Colombia. So that's from the statistical side. And again, for in the consultation process, the final draft of the document was shared with all the agencies, and we received comments from all of them.
Thank you. And anyone else working with the UN agencies? Contribution from UN agencies. Any comments on that?
So we didn't really use that much data from many agencies in our VNR, but one of the most important things for us has always been the clarity around the methods of how the indicators are set up and what data they're looking for, because that really helps us then when we're looking for data to understand, you know, how these indicators are worked out.
Yeah, thank you, Joan. I was wondering if Mr. Sharmaki from the petition noticed some of the data and in some Somali VNRs from the UN agency. Could you provide some comments on this?
Yeah, I think in Somalia, actually, there's the UN agencies for humanitarian purposes collect a lot of data, and we were able to access some of these data and turn it into sort of official statistics and use it for official statistics purposes. So that they have been helpful. So in the case of FAO, which my colleague just mentioned, there is a program called, or project that is unique to Somalia that FAO manages. Is called the Food Security and Nutrition Analysis Unit. So they collect, you know, a lot of data on food security, but also on CPI and on other data. So that has been very useful. So I think other agencies we're still working with them, but that has been their contribution. Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you for give some the good insight from Somali's experience. Maybe we have time for maybe one more question for all the panelists. So how have you addressed data gap in the VR process? Maybe I'll link to another question. Have you used some new data sources or data innovation and in the SDG monitoring and also in the VNR, included in the VNRs? Maybe this time I will have the reverse order. I will ask Joanne to answer it first and then pass to Karen.
Yep. So data gaps, that's the really hard one, because at this stage in the process, you've gone through all of the data you know about, so you're now looking for data you don't know about. And one of the things we've done in the UK is develop a non-official data protocol. I will put a link to it in the chat later, which is setting out how we will use data from non-government organisations to complement the official statistics that we have.
Thank you. And Karen?
Yeah, we have incorporated the production of SDG indicators with new data sources specific, and we have recognized these indicators as part of the official statistics through aligned called experimental statistics here in Colombia. It's also in our website, and we have opening the floor for innovations while ensuring still at minimum standards of quality. And in terms of VNR, the measures that we currently have were not part of the SDGs that were studied by the past VNR. However, in the section that of the VNR in which we mentioned it, all the work with custodian agencies here in Colombia, we put the whole list of indicators that were recently produced with them, included including traditional and non-traditional sources.
Thank you, Karen. I will maybe ask Mr. Duquest. Can you address the data gap question and new data sources?
Thank you. Yeah, we were also confronted with data gaps, and for that reason, we decided to build these data clusters, meaning that we have been looked for data from other data producers, which of course had to be assumed to be accurate or to be correct, and in order to have a bit more elements in our quantitative evaluation of a target, because you sometimes just we had one or two indicators which were not enough to have the necessary information to then have the quantitative evaluation of the target. So we worked with these data clusters, meaning bringing other data sources together to try to have a better picture of the implementation of the target.
Thank you very much. And Mr. Sharmaki?
Thank you very much. Actually, one of the good things about the VNR process for Somalia is that this is the first time, first of all, that we are participating. So our expectation was that we would not find enough data to sort of present that, and that maybe would be even across the government. Basically, the expectation was that we would only attain around 20% of the SDG tier 1, for example, the data available. But we were amazed to get more than 50% of both tier 1 and tier 2, as Alexandra earlier presented. So the VNR actually gave us an opportunity to get information that we would otherwise not be able to get or make an effort. So it's been a very useful exercise in terms of filling our statistical gaps and finding data. So and we're actually still continuing with that progress. There are still some low-hanging fruits that we can fill the data with, as Alexandra earlier presented. And the remainder, we are hoping, we can make the necessary effort to generate them. So one of the so by the end of of this process, hopefully by the time we submit the draft report in April of this year, we are hoping to get something like 80% of the tier 1 and tier 2 data. So incredibly useful it has been, and we have been amazed with the progress that we've made. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. I will give all the panelists 1 minute for final remark. So I probably will start the lady first. I will start with Joanne, and just provide your final remarks and comments.
Thank you. I just wanted to echo something that was just said, and that is about how it is a wonderful process for finding more data. One of the things we did actually before we started our VNR was publish a report on our data gaps, following which we had lots of people get in touch and say, that's not a gap, here we have some data. So be prepared to be open about this process as you approach people, because you can't possibly know all of your data sources. That's why you need to make these relationships and build connections to topic experts. So yeah, that would be my final message is really embrace this process as an excellent learning opportunity to build relationships and find out more than you thought you would about the data you hold.
Thank you very much. And Joanne, and next Karen.
Thank you so much again. I see very great examples of things that we are going to review after this event. For example, what Switzerland presented. We are currently working in our website from the National Statistics for SDGs. So we also see very key elements. We also have a line of the use of non-traditional data sources. So the link that Joan provided would also be used here. And again, we need to continue to work with data gaps to make more data available, not only in terms of SDGs, we need to also guarantee that data that is currently produced for the national level, it's also available for vulnerable groups. This is in line with the Leave No One Behind. So all the approach for differential statistics are also very important for us. And finally, beyond the VNRs, data could be used for any kind of quantitative analysis in the government. So we are also working for having more documents and more platforms to enhance the use and reuse of data for public policy decisions. Thank you again, and over back to you.
Thank you so much, Karen. I'll pass this to Jack for the final remark.
Thank you. I think evidence-based information are key in the preparation of a VNR, because in a VNR, you have certain political appreciation of the development of a country towards the implementation of the 2030 agenda. And using sometimes an adverb in a sentence may bring to certain political discussions within the government. Whereas when you mention a figure produced by your statistical office, usually you bring very early, very quickly, the politicians to a common ground to come to a common conclusion as far as the implementation of the 2030 agenda. I give you an example to say that the poverty has massively or has a lot increased in Switzerland, for example. Just I give you an example, would be a sentence which would be very quick debated within the politics. Whereas if you say that according to national statistics, now X% of the people live under the national poverty objective, this is usually a information which is broadly accepted by everyone. So data helps you in your work. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Jackie. And the last but not least, Mr. Sharmaki. Mr. Sharmaki.
Thank you very much. Now, yeah, I think just following on the point that I made earlier about, the process being useful and things like that. So it had also quite an impactful, outcome in terms of creating awareness by us going. This is our first VNR, as I said. So in terms of creating awareness for the 2030 agenda as the SDG, for policymakers, for the public in general, is being quite really useful, and generating this, data visualization and also engaging with different, government agencies and also civil society is being it is being a more than just a process, but actually in terms of advocacy, highlighting, the progress, highlighting the gaps and the need to do more, also among partners and so it's that is one of the key the outcomes and usefulness of this process. So we're delighted to be part of it, and I would like to thank also the organizers for sharing with us, for giving us the opportunity to share our experience, and look forward to doing more of these events. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. And I would like to thank all our panelists for their incredible, insightful, and interesting presentations, and for answer all the questions. This will be very helpful for those countries that are developing their 2022 or future VNRs. I would also like to thank the colleagues that attended the side event and asked so many interesting questions. So I would like to inform a recording of this event, and the presentation will be available shortly. So thanks again, and I will see you soon at other side events and at the Statistical Commission in the coming days. Thanks.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye. Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye. Thank you so much. Thank you so much. Bye. Bye.